What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope all's good wherever you are. In this video, we have Charlie Kirk debating a woke student at a university campus on critical race theory. Let's get into it.
So let me ask you a question. So in the CRT literature, what do they think of white people or whiteness?
Who would you like me to quote?
Kimberly Crenshaw.
I haven't read Kimberly Crenshaw.
She says that whiteness is a cancer or a toxin on our society.
The concept of whiteness, the racial concept of whiteness.
Okay, so what is whiteness?
What is whiteness?
Yeah, define it.
As Kimberly Crenshaw would probably say, the sort of construction of privilege that comes with being white in this country.
Right, so what privilege do you and I as white people have that black people don't have?
Yeah, great question. On applications that are blindly judged, white-sounding names are often given the job more, they're paid more.
Not true. In fact, it's the opposite. There's black privilege right now. It's called affirmative action, where underqualified blacks are taking Asians and white people's places in universities across the country. True or false?
True.
Okay, so yeah, there's black privilege, not white privilege in this country.
I actually don't think affirmative action is how we address education inequality.
Okay, well, that affirmative action is still largely supported by the CRT regime. But let's get back to CRT, to the essence of it.
Sure.
CRT believes in one manifestation of its ideology is black-only dormitories. So white people are not allowed. Do you believe in black-only dormitories?
No, and I don't have to agree with every aspect of an ideology to argue for it.
So then what part of CRT do you like? Because they call whiteness a toxin, black-only dormitories, and if you want to talk about like ideological or intellectual sloppiness, the 1619 Project was...
I think it's very sloppy.
Okay, we agree. Nicole Hannah-Jones.
I think it's overstated, and I think some of the parts are inaccurate.
Okay, good.
The parts of CRT that I think are most relevant and, very factually, you can, what am I trying to say? There's a lot of evidence for them, is the fact that previous inequalities, such as the institution of slavery, such as our treatment of Native Americans, do in fact affect those populations today. And you were saying before, in inner cities, there's a lot more crime, and a lot of that is because of redlining and other practices that come directly from the mistreatment of minorities previously in this country.
So I want to make sure I understand. So black people make up 13% of the American population.
Oh, 1350, my favorite.
Yes, exactly. Why do they commit 55% of all the murders?
Super great question. It's basically a very complex intersection of race and economic status. It's pretty well known that minority people tend to be in a lower economic status because of discrimination that they face.
So then why don't poor Asians commit a lot of murders?
Also a great question. Asian people weren't originally brought to America on purpose like black people, and they weren't already present here like natives.
Wait, so blacks murder because they were brought here 250 years ago?
No, I would like to finish.
Okay, just answer. It's very simple.
I am answering.
No, I know, but you're not really.
I am. Asian Americans predominantly immigrate here for work reasons. They come from already wealthy countries. They're already wealthy when they get here. Crime is committed primarily by poorer people.
First of all, that's not true. Talk to anybody from who's Vietnamese? Anybody? Did your family come here wealthy?
No.
Yes and no.
Not wealthy, but not.
Yes
I'm not
or
saying
no?
they come
No.
here. Okay.
The average Vietnamese does not come here wealthy.
I'm not. Okay. I perhaps misspoke. Not wealthy, but a lot of the, you complain about it all the time. A lot of the immigration from countries that border us, right? It's sort of desperate people who are of a lower economic status, right? And they're coming here for a better life.
So two things. Number one, there's been more blacks that have legally immigrated to this country in the last 30 years than were ever brought as slaves. That's number one. Number two, you still haven't answered the question.
I'm trying to.
Why?
It's a complicated answer.
Black people are only 13% of the population, yet they commit 55% of the murders. Why?
Because black people tend to be in lower economic statuses because of
Okay, no, this
CRT,
is fine. This is great.
Basically,
so you think that poverty equals crime?
I think that it's highly correlated, and there's a lot of studies
This is where
on
we
that.
disagree. What an insult to the working poor of this country.
So why do you think black people commit more crime,
Well, first of all,
Kirk?
so let me ask you a question as my answer.
Go on.
What percentage of blacks have a father around when they're raised?
I'm not sure.
20%.
So that's why you
80% of
think it
blacks
is.
do not have a stable father around. It is the most predictable way to end up in prison, end up as a murderer or a criminal.
And why
It's
do
not a
you think that's
racism
a problem?
It's not a white supremacy problem. It's a fact that black fathers impregnate women and they don't stay around with the women
And
that they have
why,
impregnated.
Charlie Kirk, do you think that happens more in the black community compared to others?
It's threefold. Number one, we subsidize single motherhood. Number two, it's culture. It's accepted in the black community, and it shouldn't be.
So it's culture. Okay.
Don't take my word for it. Read Thomas Sowell's own book on how black culture allows single motherhood to continue into a nanny state type practice. 75% of black youth are raised without a father in the home. 75%. Is that a bigger problem or not a bigger problem than whiteness, white privilege, or white supremacy?
CTR in itself, this girl's like preaching CTR to Charlie Kirk, that's racist in itself. The whole concept of it is to answer for past inequalities, and I'm not saying there's never been inequality, but they want to answer for past inequalities to rectify history, but the way they want to do that is by committing wrongs in the present to make up for past wrongs. But all you're doing at that point, when you do these overcorrections that critical race theory wants you to do, right, it's not enough to just bring everybody equal. We have to overcorrect. Were injustice done to women, inequalities towards women in the past? Sure. Black people? Obviously. Even gay people. But you don't overcorrect. You bring everybody equal. But now we're at a point with critical race theory that's all about overcorrection. But we're not dealing with victim and oppressor anymore. You're dealing with people who look like perpetrators of the past and people who look like victims of the past. But that's it. That's all you're dealing with. People that look like people that did a bad thing and people that look the same as people that bad things were done to. So why are we overcorrecting? I believe that everybody should be equal. Everything should be merit-based. But you don't punish people who were not oppressors to please people who were not victims. And even if these, students, these say, let's use black students that say, well, I feel that I'm wrong today because of what happened to my ancestors in the past. How do you measure that? How do you measure the truth of that? You can't. It's immeasurable. The best you can do is bring everybody equal. But now what we have is this overcorrection where you're allowed to be racist towards white people, white rage, and you hear, white tears. And Douglas Murray talks about this in The War in the West, so white female tears. But if you happen to say black rage, black tears, that sounds cringe because you're not used to hearing it, but it's just as racist when you say it the other way. If somebody said, black rage or black tears, cry me those black female tears, you would just assume, you would say, that person's a proper racist. Well, it works the same the other way around. There's a crazy book out there written by Robin DiAngelo, probably the second worst book ever written, called White Fragility. And this thing during the George Floyd riots, St. George of fentanyl, this thing sold, like 1 million copies. Maybe 500,000 copies. A lot of freaking books. But she says that there is no good form of white. A very pro-critical race theory. And she's white herself. That there is no good form of white and that you can't escape it. And everything Western traditional is white. And everything white is bad. Therefore, everything that we have in the West is bad. That if you are white, you are bad. But what is it? Just like Charlie said, what is white? What is identifying as white? What the hell does that mean? It's such a weird way to describe people. Like, I live the way I live. I don't look at myself as a white person. I just live my life. But we're allowed in North America right now to be racist towards white people. That's acceptable. It's been acceptable for a while, too. Even Michael Moore wrote a book called Stupid White Man. Do you think there's a book out there called Stupid Black Man? He even had a chapter in there called Blame Whitey. Imagine he said that the other way around. Ooh, that would be racist. They talk about white supremacy, but all they do with CTR is they take white supremacy and just flip it around. That's all it is. And now, because of CTR, we have this overcorrection, right? Women were mistreated in the past, so therefore, instead of just bringing everybody equal, let's beat up on men for a little bit. Same thing goes with black people. Well, we had inequalities in the past, and look, they did. I'm not denying that. But beating up on white people today to make up for sins of the past is not the way to go. We're just dividing people even more, and that's what CTR does. It divides society even more. Let's get back to it.
They should all be addressed, and they're all related.
Okay, how is a white person to blame for the fact that 75% of blacks...
individual white people aren't at all to blame.
Okay, we agree.
Yeah.
So, but wouldn't it be more, smarter to be like, hey, that this is not about systemic racism? Stop impregnating your women and abandoning them?
Well, the way to incentivize not impregnating women and abandoning them is increasing access to healthcare, into housing, into everything that we know increases those outcomes for people.
So we have spent $30 trillion on the social welfare system since 1965. black people are poorer, and the single motherhood went from 25% to now 75 to 80%. So the more money we've spent on black America, the less fathers we have, because black women divorced black men and married the government.
And do you think that's a problem inherent to black people?
No, it's not. It's happening now in white communities and Hispanic communities. It's just the worst in black America.
And why do you think that is?
Why is it the worst in black America? There's also a cultural problem. There is, and we have to be honest about it.
It's just that black people are
No, let me ask you a question.
Like
the average music that a black person in Compton is listening to, is it about contemplating the good, the true, and the beautiful, or is it about being a gangbanger and trying to get as much money and sleep with as many girls as you can?
I would actually like to think I would be offended by that.
Do you think the average black kid in Compton is listening to Beethoven or some sort of gangster rap music that glorifies gangster culture?
Silly question. Rap wasn't created to glorify gangster culture. So even though there is rap, I'm sure that's doing that.
You're dodging the question because...
Okay, I'm sure they're listening to rap.
Okay.
So you think rap music makes them leave their mom?
Do you think the cultural expectation in black America is that you stay with the woman that you impregnate?
Within black communities? I can't speak on that.
Okay, the answer is no. It's not. It's not expected.
Okay, and do you think that is...
Hold on. In white Anglo-Saxon Protestant communities, it's a fact. Hold on. In upper middle class white communities...
Upper middle class. Say that part louder.
Yeah, upper middle class white Anglo-Saxon Protestant communities, if you impregnate a woman, you are looked down upon and we do not think highly of you if you abandon the woman that you impregnate. Mm-hmm. That's a cultural difference. Has nothing to do with money. Has nothing to do with anything except norms. And the norms that have infected black America are destroying it from within. We need more fathers, not less. We need more dads around and less drag queen story hour. We need more young blacks to be able to look up to role models that are not leaving all the time and are not just saying, hey, I impregnated her, so be it. It's a toxin, and if we don't address that as the root cause, it's white supremacy, it's injustice, it's economics, we're dancing around the core of the issue.
I guess what I'm saying is, right, and you've perfectly actually laid out the dichotomy here. It is a fact, obviously, that black people disproportionately commit crime in this country. No one's arguing that. But you either believe that that is due to a complex intersection of social, economic, and leftover effects from previous inequalities, or you believe that that is an inherent trait to the race.
No, I don't. Because they weren't that way in the 1940s and 50s. Black America was one of the most peaceful, flourishing, fastest growing economically communities in the country. It's not genetic. You're trying to point something on me that I don't believe. Instead,
but then
Black
you do
America,
believe that it's not genetic, so you do think CRT is correct.
Hold on a second.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
In the 1940s and 1950s, Black America was prosperous and was on pace to be richer and wealthier than white America. More dads were staying with the women that they were with. There was monogamy. What changed?
You're supporting my argument.
No, hold on. But answer the question. What changed? Did America get more racist since the 1950s?
I would argue there were more racist policies passed. There were more policies dedicated to lining off those communities and pushing them into poor housing and poor schools.
Wait a second. In the 1950s, Jackie Robinson had not even broken the color barrier. We had Jim Crow laws. We hadn't passed the Civil Rights Act, and we hadn't passed the Voting Rights Act. Yet blacks were better in the 1950s per capita than they are today. So we have become less racist. We've passed more anti-racist laws and given more stuff, and blacks are worse than they were 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Why?
So you're equating here institutional and social racism.
It's hard to deny what Charlie Kirk is saying here. And I know these woke students that go to these universities that, leave there with a lesbian dance degree, know a lot about how to be a victim. They don't know nothing about math or sociology or economics, but they know a lot about CTR. And it's hard to deny. Even Barack Obama said that fathers need to be more present in their children's lives. The Journal of Research on Adolescence confirmed that even after controlling for, say, varying levels of household income, kids in a father-absent home were more likely to end up in jail. And also kids who never had a father in the house, ever, the guy bounced, they are likely to wind up in jail. In 1960, 5% of America's children entered the world. They were born without a mother and a father married to each other. 5%. By 1980, this was 18%. By year 2000, this was 33%. 15 years later, it was about 41%. Right now, it's close to 50%. But for blacks, that even during slavery, when marriage for slaves was illegal, black children more likely then than today to be raised by their mother and their fathers. There's a crazy stat from economist Walter Williams And he wrote that according to a census data from 1890 to 1940, a black child was more likely to grow up with married parents than a white child. More likely than a white child to grow up with married parents. For blacks, out of wedlock births have gone from 25% in 1965 to 73% in 2015. Those numbers are insane. For whites, I mean, it's bigger, but it's not that crazy. It went from 5% to 25%. And for Hispanics, out of wedlock birth, today is like close to 60, 56%, something of the sorts. So what happened to fathers? Well, just like Charlie describes, it can be found in a basic law of economics. If you subsidize undesirable behavior, you will get more undesirable behavior. In 1949, the nation's poverty was about 35%. By 1965, that was cut in half to say 17%. It was about that, 15, 17%. All before President Lyndon Johnson's so-called war on poverty. But after 1965, poverty in the U.S. began to flatline. From 1965 to now, the government spent basically $20 trillion to fight poverty. But the poverty rate has pretty much remained unchanged across the board. See some spikes here and there, nothing to write home about. But the relationship between poor men and women has changed dramatically, and that's because our generous welfare system allows women, in effect, to marry the government. This makes it all too easy for men to abandon their traditional moral and financial responsibilities. And listen, I'm not excusing men here when I say this. Both parties are to blame if you're not involved in your child's life. But there's even a term for this, right? Psychologists have called this dependency learned helplessness. Kids need a father in a home. A mother cannot calm down a young boy. Even Tupac Shakur, the rapper, said that if he had had a father at home, he knows he would have been more disciplined, more confident, and he would have been less likely to join a gang, because a lot of people join gangs because they want that father figure in their life. They need structure. They need protection that a man gives them. Let's get back to the video.
Social racism was certainly worse in the 1950s. I'm sure everyone would agree. But institutional racism occurs when policies are passed against people.
Come on.
Which can increase over time, and it did.
You're not being intellectually honest. You know that. There was black-only drinking fountains in the 1950s. We don't have those anymore. Well, we're bringing them back with, black-only dormitories. But we had, for example, in the antebellum South in the 1950s, we had white-only communities, by law. We got rid of that with the Civil Rights Act. But it didn't, unfortunately, we look around, the numbers speak for themselves. Black youth are less likely to have fathers. They're not doing as well as far as economically. They commit more crime. So something changed. And our argument is what changed is three things. Number one, the imposition of the Great Society Project by Lyndon Baines Johnson of spending $30 trillion since 1960s on Section 8 housing, on welfare, on all sorts, where, as I said, that young black women married the government and they divorced young black men. And then we also have had as Thomas Sowell and as Clarence Thomas would say, the soft bigotry of low expectations. And we have been afraid to get to the root of the issue or even speak about it because we don't want to be called a racist.
So what is imposing those low expectations?
Part of it is like white academic culture. I'll give you an example. I'm not saying you believe this, but Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, has come out and said having an ID to vote is racist. That is code for saying black people are too dumb to get a voter ID.
You're doing it again. You're simplifying a very nuanced, complex argument from the real people who are making it.
Is voter ID racist?
Obviously not, Charlie.
Okay, all right.
Do you want to know where the argument comes from? I can eloquently tell you.
Eloquently tell me why voter ID is racist or whatever.
Certain policies in southern states were proposed that would, I think the quote from the person who decided the case was, with surgical precision, target the times where black people were voting and make it illegal or harder for them to get that to come at that time. And then they were targeting the type of ID that black voters had and making that specific type of ID illegal. That is racist.
Perfectly fair. How does that impact today, saying that every citizen, if you need an ID to vote, just that aside, why is it racist?
Because we have to have, obviously humans are making those decisions, right? And so if there is still institutional racism and people in power that are racist, we can't trust those institutions to make those decisions without discriminating against people.
What institutional racism do we have in this country right now?
What you just named it.
What?
1350.
Okay, well, I mean,
affirmative action needs to happen because there is not that many minorities in these higher educations or higher education institutions.
Okay, so you're being clear, which is then you lower standards.
No.
Affirmative
I don't
action
support
always
that.
does. Affirmative action lowers standards by definition.
I'm saying why affirmative action was introduced. I'm not arguing for it.
Were you asking me why it was introduced, or?
No, I'm saying you agree that's why it was introduced.
Well, I agree why it was. I don't think it ever should have been, but yes.
Right,
I mean,
but there is institutional inequality, yes?
Well, I wouldn't even use the word inequality. I mean, I don't love looking at it that way, but of course, white people generally are richer than black people in this country.
Richer and more represented in politics and schools, yes?
Somewhat yes and no.
Why do you think that is, Charlie?
Well, hold on a second. Let's ask the question here. Represented how? So, I mean...
Look at Congressman.
So, no, hold on a second. Are white people represented fairly in the National Basketball Association?
Who cares? What political
Hold on,
power
I
does
thought
the
we're all
national...
about fair representation.
Listen.
I think that it should, by law, half of the NBA should be white.
Great, fine.
And the product would suck.
Lobby for it.
Because
I don't
blacks
care.
are much better at basketball than we whites are.
What political power does the NBA have?
A lot, actually. The NBA reaches millions of people every day. They have slogans that people internalize. In fact, if the NBA had no political power, why would they have to wear Black Lives Matter on all their jerseys? Why would politicians try to get their endorsements all the time? The NBA is more powerful than Congress in some ways of shaping the minds.
It's your turn to be academically dishonest.
Hold on
now,
a second.
but sure.
No. But if you want fair representation, just to be clear, then why would you not be against whites by law being half of the National Basketball Association? Right now, black people make up 88% of the NBA.
Do it, great. Who cares?
No,
I don't care. I'm saying,
okay.
Right, so here's my point.
All right, fine. I have a shot, everybody.
Please listen.
I could play for the Lakers.
I hope... Do it, Charlie. I'll come to your games. I'll do it.
The point is this, is that merit should triumph over all of it.
Which is awesome. Okay, so merit should triumph. We agree.
Okay.
Okay, Charlie, do you think black people are not as smart or competent
Absolutely
as white
not.
people?
No.
Perfect. So they should, in theory, then, be equally represented in positions of
No,
power.
hold on. So have you ever read Discrimination and Disparities by Thomas Sowell?
Do you only read Thomas Sowell? You've quoted him like 3 times. I haven't read that.
No, I read a lot more than Thomas Sowell, but I'm happy to... Thomas Sowell's the only intellectual with the courage to go after like these core issues of why black America has fallen behind and why no one actually has studied it. So let's just give a great example. When you don't have a father in the home, the amount of words that a child hears goes down by 60 to 70%.
I still can't get past the fact that earlier in the video she said that Asian families come to America wealthy. As somebody who currently lives in Southeast Asia, my wife's from Thailand. My family is long deceased. My mother and father, so, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. We moved here because her family's still well alive and kicking, and the food and weather are much better. But these people, these woke students, they like to talk about white privilege. And on the topic of having the fathers at home, I think that is the privilege. It's not about being white or having money. And yes, having money will make your life definitely easier, because if you're born in like dirt poor poverty, that's going to be hard to get out of that. But statistically, if you look at black kids and white kids that grow up in the same neighborhoods, if the black kid has both parents at home, they statistically will do better in almost every metric measurable than the white kid. The privilege in life in 2024 is having 2 great parents at home, man and woman, mother and father, that instill good morals into their children, that teach them the ways of life, teach them about higher education. And by that, I don't necessarily mean going to university. I mean, educate yourself, keep on learning, be smart, use your brain, learn to think critically. You don't need money, but having a good mom, I didn't grow up rich. We have a big family, but that was where I was privileged, as I had my mother and my father who were married, who loved each other, and who instilled their beliefs, their morals into us and taught us, you know, the value of a dollar, that you need to work hard, good work ethic. That is what privilege is today, is having both parents at home. All the stats. Without the father at home, the father is so important that even the stats of single dads for, like, say, incarceration rate, high school dropouts, pregnancy rates, teen pregnancy rates, if it's only the father in the household, the numbers aren't bad. They're about the same as having both parents at home. Now, I do think, obviously, having both parents at home is way better. But fathers are so important. Incarceration rates, teen pregnancy, high school dropouts, getting into gangs, committing crimes. All of these metrics gets substantially better by having a father in the household. Let's get back to the video.
The amount of words that a child, I don't know if you're a mother or not, or plan to be. Okay. No, just it's an important point. The amount of words that an 18-month-year-old hears is highly predictive of IQ, verbal development. Okay, so that's simple. When you don't have a dad in the home, the mom is overwhelmed and there's just less interaction with the child.
That's all fine.
Okay, so we agree. I'm just saying that's not because of racism.
That's true. Obviously,
no, that's fine.
That's good.
No, she. I know what you meant. But you have a father in the home. All of a sudden, they hear thousands of more words a day, and they're like way further ahead of a single mother raising a child. That's not racism.
Okay, so dads are good. Yes, great.
Okay.
My question to
I'm
you
saying dads
is,
actually answer most of the questions that you might have about why Black America is falling behind.
Okay, but
because their dads don't stay around, and that's bad.
I'm trying to sort of get to you to reconcile your own beliefs, and if that's true, which is fine, that's true. We can say that's true. You either believe that has social and economic causes, or you believe that, Black culture's just worse.
No,
and there
I
isn't
think
another thing to think.
No, I was very clear. Right now, Black culture is being held captive by influences, songs, and role models. I mean, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B.
Okay, Nicki Minaj is causing dads to leave the home.
Hold on a second. I don't think that's a good role model for 18-year-old Black girls. I don't think that songs that are talking about like glorifying wet female genitalia is exactly. I don't know which one wrote that song. Which one was it?
I think it was Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but by the way, the role models of the 1940s and 50s for Black America were completely different.
So it is a representation issue.
Hold on a second. No, not representation. It's who do you get your art from? It's what values are they putting forward? It's the question of every day, for example, more times than not, Black politicians will lament the condition of America. It's systemically racist. It's terrible. What does that do to a 14-year-old Black kid if you just find that you hear that everything is rigged against you? Instead, they should be saying, hey, there might be some barriers, but if you believe in yourself enough, you can achieve in this country. It creates a form of social conditioning of low expectations, and that's not my argument. You know whose argument that is? Barack Obama's.
I don't necessarily agree with everything he said either, man.
Barack Obama said, number one, we need more fathers in the home. This is when Barack Obama didn't go super woke.
Obama's a liberal. I don't care what he's got to say.
Okay, but Barack Obama, then secondly, he said that we can't keep telling our Black youth that you can't succeed in this country. Anybody can succeed in this country. And Obama was right when he said that. Obama was correct when he said that we need to change the story we're telling Black America.
Which is fine. I've never heard any teacher look at a Black person and say, oh, you can't succeed because of racism.
Hold on a second. But what is the embedded message of all the propaganda saying it's systemically racist, you're going to run into racist employers, that they're going to discriminate against you? It creates this heaviness of why even try?
By the time college students get to college, they've experienced all that. They don't need to be told.
You think that the average? I'm curious. You think that the average Black student at this university experiences like active daily racism? I'd be curious.
I'd have to ask. You can ask him to raise their hand.
I don't know. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's as bad as it was in the antebellum South. So.
I'm not saying that, obviously.
Okay.
I did say social racism improved. I'm saying institutional racism is still present, and that's what's causing lower outcomes for minority communities.
Do you think the reason why only 20 to 25%, it depends, we don't know the number, it's just a range per year.
Sure.
So 1 in 4 of Black youth have a stable father around. What would you just say is why is that the reason?
A complex intersection of social and economic reasons, which are outlined in CRT.
Okay. Thank you for the dialogue. Thank you.
Okay.
Another banger of a debate by Charlie Kirk. The young lady, I had hopes for her at the beginning, but the longer she spoke, the longer this video went on, she just sounded more and more like a privileged brat, I guess is what I would call it. Hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel, help it grow. I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace out, everybody.